Welcome to Beyond the Valley, a CNBC tech podcast with Arjun Kharpal and Tom Chitty.
Beyond the Valley.
Chips are an integral part of the AI boom, powering the development of more advanced systems. In relation to semiconductors and AI, the name on everyone's lips is Nvidia, which for a while has been seen as the only game in town. But there are a number of startups looking to challenge Nvidia's dominance. One of those is Rebellions, which last year became South Korea's first AI chip unicorn or company valued over $1 billion after it merged with another semiconductor startup called Sapion. Rebellions has some hefty backers, including SK Group and Saudi Aramco's venture capital arm.
Beyond the Valley.
My guest today is the CEO of Rebellions, and he's worked in companies from Intel to SpaceX. Sunghyun Park, thanks for joining me on this special episode of Beyond the Valley from the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona.
Thank you for introduction.
So great to meet you, Sunghyun. Let's just start off by talking about what does Rebellions do?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. I'm a big fan of the Beyond the Valley. It's an honor to be part of this program. Yes, so as you mentioned, with Team Rebellions was founded in September 2020. And in Series A, we are backed by Korea Telecom. And right now we got merged with SK Sapion last December. Right now we are backed by number 1 and 2 telco in Korea. That's why the MWC is our best place, promotion our product and technology.
Great. And so what are your key products, Sunghyun? What does Rebellions do? What are your key products at the moment?
Sure. It's something like, somebody's not very familiar with the AI chip. It's something like Nvidia products, so junior Nvidia or Korean version of Nvidia. But in terms of products, we are focused on inference. But let me talk about the functional diversities. Nvidia's GPU, general purpose GPU, offers much higher functional diversities. They can do any kinds of parallel computation, including training, inference, Bitcoin mining, or graphics rendering, any kinds of high-performance computing. So better than us. However, when it comes to inference only, I think our product and technology offer a higher energy efficiency and performance, especially in latency. That's a little bit different. Also, we Korean startup, as you mentioned, we are Korea's only deep tech unicorn so far. We have fully leveraged Korean semicon ecosystem. For example, SK Hynix, Samsung Foundry. That's a little bit different from other AI chip startup and Nvidia.
Yeah, really interesting. So, I do want to dig into, because what you're talking about is two different things. And just if our listeners don't know, you have the training, right? And we've spoken so much about training these huge large language models, these huge AI foundational models. And Nvidia has been very successful in this particular market. Now a lot of companies are talking about inferencing. Now this is really maybe the best way to think about it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the actual real application of the AI, right? So the use of the AI.
Got it.
So when we talk about inferencing, why does the chip architecture need to be different?
So, let me back to your very first question here. So, for those who are not very familiar with the training and inference, so training is kind of research and development to develop the AI models. It's R&D. On the other hand, inference is where actual business began. Totally different. It's R&D phase and the business phase. From compute workload wise, it's something like feedback, P3, something like too much complicated. But from enterprise point of view, that's the R&D and the business. But DeepSeek, any other model right now coming up, so business going to be a much higher. That's why Rebellions focuses on the inference. But let me back to your question again. Inference doesn't require any await update during all the process workload, meaning that it doesn't need to be connected to multiple GPUs and not hundreds of the GPU or something like that, or a couple of GPUs or 4 to 8, because even with 175 billion model, just H100, for example, with the quantizer model, a couple of H100 from Nvidia is good enough. So interconnects and other software flexibility training require much higher flexibility, even in hardware and the software. Meaning, from inference point of view, that's all overhead. We don't need that much flexibility and luxury. So it's exactly what DeepSeek was doing. DeepSeek developed their model using Nvidia GPU. And on the other hand, as you know, the DeepSeek is top ranked in App Store, the Apple. There are a lot of traffic in inference, but they're doing the inference using Huawei's inference chip. That's exactly what the approach, and technically a little bit different.
Yeah. So fascinating. So you're able to do inferencing with fewer chips, is what you're saying?
Yes, without much fewer interconnect, much fewer SRAM, but we still need some flexibility to support diversity of all AI inference demand. So our key technology, which is differentiated from other AI chip companies out there, is HBM-centric and the chiplet-centric architecture. So Nvidia is really doing great in the high bandwidth memory architecture, but most of the United States AI chip startup, very fancy, really good startup out there is, for example, Samba Nova, Grow, TensorRT, really good talent, but they're not that much optimized for high bandwidth memory. SRAM only, no DRAM. But we are focused on high bandwidth memory at chiplet. That's the key differentiator from other AI chip startups.
So your architecture uses high bandwidth memory.
Yes.
Interesting, because this is high bandwidth memory is a key part of Nvidia's products.
Yes.
As well, from SK Hynix in particular.
Exactly.
But if you bring high bandwidth memory onto an inferencing chip, what does that allow the chip to do, and then ultimately what does that mean for the AI application?
Yeah, if we have higher bandwidth between the memory and our SoC, number one is we can get higher latency, token per second, for example, in LLM. Also, we have much less energy to get the data from the memory, moving data, meaning the most important metric in here, token per second per watts, not just token per second. Our architecture is highly optimized for high bandwidth memory, meaning that we need to have very scalable network on chip, on SoC, also memory subsystem, also modular design for the chiplet, that we get higher latency, more throughput, most importantly, token per second per watts.
So more power efficient as well is what you're saying. And that's obviously important when you think about the cost of running these models, right?
Yes.
If you're a business and the cost is too high, you're not going to implement AI, right?
You got it.
So the cost needs to come down, power efficiency needs to be better, and that's what you're saying that your products are working on.
Exactly. Again, inference is a business. Inference, where the business begins, is a little bit different from training. Meaning that when you talk about inference, we first need to consider the cost and the efficiency. Cost, TCO, total cost of ownership, that includes the cost of the PCI card plus power efficiency, electricity. That's why you mentioned when you talk about business inference, we need to care about optimizing inference cost and energy efficiency.
I want to talk about the models in a moment, but first, you were talking about business, so let's talk about business. Who are you selling to? Who are your main customers, or what, if you can't name them, what are the kind of customers that you sell to?
Sure, definitely our strategic investor, SK Telecom, Korea Telecom, Kakao in Korea data center is our customer, valued customer. We already got a revenue last year. We also have huge collaboration in SK Telecom and Korea Telecom.
So to think about it, just to break it down, SK Telecom has been over the last year or so, has been investing in building the AI data center.
You got it.
And it's really interesting because I spoke to their CEO here at Mobile World Congress.
Fantastic.
And they're a telecom company traditionally.
Yeah.
But now they're investing in AI infrastructure. So your customers will be some of these data center players.
Exactly. Something like GPU as a service. We're targeting NPU as a service with the unified software platform under the SK Telecom, Korea Telecom, and Penguin Solutions. Meaning that, okay, your customer, if you want to build your own AI model using fine-tune or something, please use GPU as your service. You don't need to buy GPU by yourself. When you do actual business with established foundation model, do not use such expensive GPU anymore. Switch to the NPU as a service, exactly same software platform that we can save money, we can save all the efficiency at the same time as really, again, it's exactly what DeepSeek was doing. GPU as a service, CPU as a service on the data center of the SK Telecom. Also, we can support their in-house AI application and service from Korea Telecom and Kakao. Also, we deliver our data center product to Aramco in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We also invested by Aramco 1 year ago. That's why we have some customer feedback from our investor and customers.
That's really interesting. So let's talk about models, because you mentioned DeepSeek before. And DeepSeek, of course, we did a podcast episode on it. So if you haven't listened to that, do that. And it will hopefully give you a good insight into that. But DeepSeek really created shockwaves around the world. A big ripple effect because of the claims they made about how efficient their model was.
Right.
The fact that they were using slightly less advanced Nvidia silicon, and the fact they were using fewer amounts of Nvidia hardware as well. And so that got people talking about models, because I think for a long time we've been talking about LLMs, the large language model, and we've been talking about the way in which this requires more and more and more and more data, right? And now the focus has shifted onto the inference side and applications like reasoning.
You got it.
And this is really interesting because there's also a discussion about smaller models. And one of the, I think, interesting things about DeepSeek was this mixture of expert models, right?
You got it. Well, you're expert on AI. Cool. Yeah.
That's very kind.
Yeah.
So, no, look, the mixture of expert models is fascinating because
MOE.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about it is, if I want to learn about vegetables, and there's multiple experts in the room. There's a physicist, a biologist, a gardener, and a cook, and maybe a doctor. So maybe out of those people, I'm going to get some information from the gardener about how to grow it, maybe the cook about how to use the vegetables, and maybe the biologist about the biology. Maybe the doctor and the physicist won't contribute in that case, but it means that you can take information from these specific experts. Why is the mixture of experts model getting so much attention right now? What are the advantages?
By the way, your explanation is perfect. I'm going to steal your idea when you explain our MOE. It's exactly what I tried to explain to my investor and my friend. Okay.
Feel free to use it.
Because, still a lot of, even before DeepSeek introduced such concept, even Mistral in the Europe, led some research in the MOE. But point is, it's some benchmark. It exceeds some of the United States AI startup using the MOE. The concept itself, it's not brand new. However, the result using the MOE right now is some benchmarks higher than any other stuff. But conceptually, it's kind of reasoning of the multiple chain of inference at the end from our compute point of view. So instead of using huge LLM models, just sub-model using the chain, I think it's a better result. Also with quantized precision, I think the reason why DeepSeek got a lot of attention, one thing very clear, they show the result. Without result, everything just in academia, not the commercialized. So it's the result, benchmark, and actual traffic using the App Store #1.
Right, so it was the fact that they used, you said MOE is not new, the idea has been there, but it's the fact they managed to create a result out of it and commercialize that as well. That's really, does the MOE model, is that more efficient? Is it more energy efficient as well? Does it mean that actually this type of model will be good for the kind of chips that you're creating, because it doesn't need as much silicon there?
Basically, technically, it's hard to say it's more efficient in terms of inference. Depending on the implementation, it might be more efficient or less efficient, depending on the implementation. But still, the activating part of the entire moment, assuming that we have very smart implementing all the service and the inference. I believe you're right. We can higher energy efficiency compared to exactly just using a single gigantic LLM model. But the point is, it depending on the implementation.
Yeah. Is inferencing getting quicker? Because, sometimes you use these reasoning models, some of the new ones, DeepSeek's R1 or something from OpenAI, and it's like the human brain, right? You ask it something and it has to take some time to think.
It's more like human, as you mentioned, you're right.
So it's not an immediate response. You can see the AI thinking and then correcting itself and everything else, and then giving you an answer. I think that's what we mean about reasoning. But it still takes a bit of time. How does reasoning become quicker?
Good question. It's a chain of the inference, right? Then in terms of computation latency, computation speed, it might be lower than just a single LLM inferencing, right? But again, a little bit complicated. It's again depending on implementation. We cannot parallelize all the computation MOE. However, each component of MOE takes less time and less power than compared to the single gigantic stuff. Again, depending on the MOE, that's why how DeepSeek is implementing such MOE using lower level of C++ instead of using just the CUDA library, the PTX or something. Point is, depending on the implementation, it can be much higher energy efficiency at the almost the same token per second, something like that. So the secret of a DeepSeek, as far as I know, there's not entirely exposed, but I was working at Morgan Stanley in high frequency trading. High frequency trading like DeepSeek, very familiar with the C++ low level programming. So implementing such CUDA library using their own C++ PTX something that can do higher energy efficiency without sacrificing the performance. That's the key. Really complicated.
There's a phrase, a word that's been spoken about a lot in AI, and maybe you can help me and our listeners understand it. Distillation.
Oh, super complicated. Wow, it's a lecture of AI, distillation and the MOE.
We always hopefully, people come away from the podcast and learn something new. But OpenAI, DeepSeek, these other companies have spoken about distillation of models. So we have the large model, this big model that they've spent ages and ages and lots of resource to train, right? And this has all the knowledge. And somehow that knowledge moves from the big model to a more focused model. So the knowledge is distilled down into...
You got it.
But can you give me an example of that?
Example, basically, I'm not that much expert describe technical stuff to the public. Yeah. I mean, you're better than me. Distillation kind of, the wording of distillation, that's it. Distillation, just a part of some information going down doesn't need to activate entire network at the same time. When we activate each weights all the network, it takes some time, takes some power. We don't need to do that. That's the concept of the, bigger concept of the model compression is distillation. Basically, I'm not that much expert to...
No. And so, but I think it's speaking to the point about inferencing again. It's part of making it more efficient, right? It's part of making it more energy efficient, more and more useful and faster as well, right?
Yep.
Interesting.
So point is, when we design AI inference chip, we must consider the established model was invented using quantization and distillation. Without such concept, we can have very optimized inference chip. That's why we need to understand the distillation and the quantization. So, depending on the model, depending on the training way, we need to have our own customized silicon.
Sunghyun, you said something really interesting earlier about the South Korean tech scene, right? It's obviously very innovative companies there for a long time. Samsung, SK Hynix, and now the telecom players as well, and others as well. The world of technology, I think, has become very politicized, right? And semiconductors, AI are seen as such foundational technologies that a lot of countries are wanting to own their own supply chains, but it's hard. It's a global industry, and the supply chain is very global. How do you think Korea is thinking about, and tech companies like yourself in Korea are thinking about the world now? We have a new president in the US, and under the last president, Joe Biden, he tried to work closely with Europe, with Korea, and other places that had strong technology foundations. It's unclear at this point how the new administration is going to approach Korea, for example. It's hard to know how the new administration is going to approach Europe and working with Europe technology companies. But as you sit in Korea and as you think about the state of the world as a business, how are you navigating this, and how are you thinking about building, I guess, a Korean ecosystem?
Wow, it's kind of geopolitical issue. Wow, it's hard to say. I don't want to be political this moment, but let's talk about something technical. If you if you ask, Sunghyun, please summarize your South Korea as a one word and one sentence. Korea is semiconductor shop in the global supply chain management. So we have a foundry, we have a number one high bandwidth memory shop. We also have a talents. The most talented power in Korea is a semiconductor, not a software. So I think from Korea perspective, we can leverage such memory and foundry to make our sovereign AI. Also, we can deliver sovereign AI to other countries. So I think it's not a risk. It's a good thing to us and to Korea. Even 10 years ago, nobody talks about semiconductor. Right now, due to this geopolitical issue, everybody talks about semiconductor and data center. Without memories, without foundry, they cannot have any kinds of chips. It's something like, I know it's a little bit dangerous. It's something like nuclear power, something like that. So from Korea point of view, we need to make our isolate data center from chip to software. Okay, we can talk to other guys in terms of sovereign AI. But from Middle Asia, Middle East, and Europe, I believe they need to communicating and collaborating with other non-United States partners and non-Nvidia partners. Sovereign means multiple source of the supply chains. Sovereign means not locked with a single vendor. So collaborating and another ecosystem, a second option that we need to prepare in such little bit dangerous geopolitical situation.
Yeah, I was having a conversation here at MWC with Arthur Mensch, the CEO of Mistral AI. You mentioned Mistral earlier. He had they're obviously France-based European company. His view was that actually European tech firms need to start thinking about reducing reliance on US technology, which is a really interesting thought. And I think it's been discussed over the past few years, but nothing's really happened. I think Europe is, as ever, reliant on American technology, from the hyperscalers to even the social media apps, right?
You got it.
But now there's this change. And do you think South Korea offers an alternative now to the US?
Definitely. That's exactly what Rebellion is doing right now. That's exactly what SK and Samsung is doing right now. That's why Korea Capital in France investing in us. They need to have the second option, non-United States option, and the non-Nvidia option. That's the beginning of our sovereign AI and geopolitical issue here.
Yeah, really interesting. And like you said, I mean, Korea has a very strong tech stack.
Especially in semiconductor ecosystem.
Especially in semiconductors, exactly, yeah. Really interesting. What is the global ambitions for Rebellions? Because you mentioned, we were talking about there is an opportunity for South Korean companies, foundry, data center, chips. What is Rebellion's global ambition?
Oh, yeah, we are fabless company, so we'd like to leverage all the ecosystem in Korea first.
And is Samsung making your chips at the moment?
Foundry, yes.
Your
but
foundry
memory from SK Hynix.
Memory from SK and foundry is Samsung.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing is we have a customers, we have a reference, SK Telecom, Korea Telecom, and Kakao here. We first need to build our own reference, heterogeneous architects of data center, not only GPU, not only NPU, GPU and NPU, heterogeneous architect of data center. We first build our own reference, then replicate this design to the other global markets. but it doesn't need to be top tier hyperscaler at this moment. A lot of second tier CSP and other enterprise models try to use much more energy efficient inference and business. So that's our goal, the global market. Not to mention global is our vision, our blood. I spent 11 years in the United States. All my professional career in the United States, I got a PhD from MIT, another 6 years Intel, SpaceX, Morgan Stanley. But I came back to Korea to found the company, make the initial reference. As soon as we secure the reference, definitely go to global market to get the customer, get another reference.
What do you think of China's technology push at the moment? The US has put a lot of hurdles in the way of China over the past few years with export restrictions, sanctions, and various other things, particularly on the chip front, on the AI front. China is attempting to create also its own ecosystem, one that is driven by Chinese companies. It feels like a challenge in many areas, particularly I think on more leading edge chips. But DeepSeek has shown that things are possible. Do you think the gap between what China can do and say the US and other places will increase if China can't get access to some of this cutting edge technology?
It's, again, hard to say, but my personal opinion, China is guys doing really well. Even though it's under the scene at this moment, we have a second DeepSeek, third DeepSeek. Also, Huawei's AI chip is really great. Also, manpower is really great. Some of them got educated in the United States, get to the China. Also, it's a very nation-centric investment. So sometimes it might be good option, especially in this AI arm racing. So basically, I have no answer to your question, but what I want to say here, China is doing very well. Even now, not the potential. I'm not talking about potential. At the current status, in terms of foundation models, AI chip design, all the application and services, it's something significant.
Could China be a market for rebellions, do you think?
Oh, at the end of the day, yes. But at this moment, we are some, again, geopolitical issue between the United States, China. As long as they're not resolved, we're not going to business at all with the China.
And you mentioned you're making revenue at the moment. Developing chips is an expensive business. Do you need to raise more capital as well as the time goes on?
Definitely, we need huge capital. That's why we soon, maybe next month, next month, we're gonna do another fundraise. It's our destiny of the generating, silicon.
How much more money are you gonna raise?
About, let's see, 200 million next round. Depending on. Let me first talk to our CFO.
Great. Sunghyun, thanks so much for your insights today. It was a really fascinating conversation.
Wow, it's my pleasure.
We got through so much, and thanks for breaking down some of those technology topics and helping us navigate where the future's going.
Perfect.
That's it for this episode. If you want to contact us, email us at beyondthevalley@cnbc.com. Please follow and subscribe to the show, and you can leave us a review as well. Thank you so much, Sunghyun.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back for another episode of Beyond the Valley soon. Goodbye.
Beyond the Valley.